I don't want them to be like a Dumbledore-like figure. I want this person to be a military overseer. Welcome back, everybody, to the Dungeons & Dragons series, where we're teaching you how to create your own campaign world, your own encounters, and other tips and tricks to play and run Dungeons & Dragons. So let's get into it. So last session, we were going over using an inspiration to get an idea of the world that you want to create. Now we're going to get a few more specifics in, specifically in the starting zone, its relation to other areas, and also the party that the theoretical party that we are going to be preparing for. Let's go ahead and start off with that. So the party that I'm going to use as an example for creating my campaign is I'm going to use a very basic party setup. So we're going to assuming a party of 4 fighter, a rogue, a cleric, and a wizard. Now these encounters that we're going to be setting up further are going to work for other class combinations as well. I'm just assuming that we have each of these archetypes. And then obviously cleric, we're assuming we have someone who has some heals. This could also, you know, if you are running a party, you don't have to run a party that has a specific healer in it. A lot of the times I'll actually specifically tell my players you don't need a specific healer, because if I want them to have a healer effectively, and they don't, and nobody wants to play a cleric or druid, or at least one focused on healing, that you just make healing potions a little bit easier to come across in the world. And if we're wanting, you know, spicy things here and there, you can always throw in an NPC. Very important though, if you're throwing in an NPC for like maybe a particularly, you know, tricksy boss fight, or, you know, say they don't have an arcane person and you're like, oh, let's throw a little NPC in here that'll be with them for a couple sessions, just so they have someone who can be like, oh, hey, that's an arcane thing, and this is what you need to know about it. Be very careful not to make that one of your characters. You are not making a character for this game. You're having NPCs. They have no player. That includes the dungeon master. You're not creating NPCs specifically to be very cool and observed and, you know, like show the party how cool they are. Every once in a while, you know, you can throw in an ex machina where, you know, they're about to die and then some powerful NPC comes and swoops in to save them, but don't make that a regular thing. You know, you can use it to, you know, build up ridiculous amounts of tension and then ease the tension, and then, you know, so on and so forth. But you always need to make sure that you're not taking the spotlight away from the characters. That's probably the biggest thing. So we're assuming a party 4. We're not creating any encounters this session. I'm just letting everyone know that this is kind of the party that I'm assuming right now in my mind, and that's what I'm judging everything off of. This is also how I create campaigns just in general. Like, say I know I have, I don't know, 6 players that are going to be joining me for a session or for, you know, for a campaign, and I start creating the campaign before anyone's rolled their characters. So I assume, and I still assume 4 unique roles, and then I just add 2 specific, you know, like 2 player character levels for the encounters. So we want to know what the physical layout of the school is. At first, when I was thinking about it, I actually had in my mind, when we were first talking about this in last video, in my mind I had a tower in my mind, like the Circle of Magi from Dragon Age. Yeah, I don't know why I just had a tower, and then I was thinking, I'm like, I don't like that. I don't like the idea of it just being a tower. I don't know why. It seems a little boring to me, or I don't know. It just doesn't. It's not speaking to me so much. So I was thinking about it more, you know, throughout, you know, a couple days in the week and everything, and I came to the conclusion I want this to be like almost like a war fort, like a compound. We're talking a bunch of different buildings together in a walled perimeter. Now, I don't know if this is a wooden wall, like is it like specifically a crafted wooden wall? Is it like fort style with just like logs, sharpened tops, you know, tops carved to a point just all around, like an old school fort? Or if this is a, you know, stone masoned one, or is this a magically created fortress? with, you know, like solid steel walls or something ridiculous. What I'm actually probably going to do, so I have this note here. So with the wall perimeter, we're thinking either a fort style with pointed logs or newly masoned stone walls. What I think I'm actually going to do, and I'm, especially when I'm talking out loud thinking about this right now, I think what I'm going to be doing is having it both, technically speaking. So I want it to have an old fort wall with, you know, pointed logs at, you know, all around it, but they're in the middle of replacing those with masoned walls to make it a more defensible location. So there's like genuinely people constructing, maybe it's students, maybe it's, you know, slave laborers, maybe it's actual skilled laborers that are hired to bring in here, maybe it's some sort of military engineers who this is like, this is kind of what they do. They build stuff for the military. But either way, this school is in the process of turning their fort walls, their fortifications, from logs to stone masonry. So I think that's a really good idea. So now we know a little bit of the physical layout. I will be making probably a separate video that's not technically part of this series, but I'm probably going to be creating a video in the near future where I'm dungeon tiling out digitally this whole fortress. It also gives a good idea of what it looks like, and I can give that to the players when they start out, because I don't need to worry about like hiding any doors or anything. These people have been here for 2 years. I can safely assume that they're going to know most, if not all, of the layout. So we kind of have an idea of physical layout of the school. It's a compound with a wall perimeter. We have quite a few things. I'm thinking this compound started as a single guard tower somewhere that was a frontier place before the Empire expanded. Empire, or, you know, whatever, before this country, this body of power expanded. Let's actually make a note of that. So the school's location started as a single guard tower, maybe 2 stories. Probably just 2 stories, you know, just like a base. Anyways, in what was then a frontier area of the Empire. I'm writing Empire in quotes because I don't think I'm actually going to call it an empire. Just it's a good reference, good mental reference, gives you an idea of the type of organization we're creating that's in power. Started as a single guard tower location, frontier of the Empire, but is now well within its bounds. So there's going to be a very old stone masonry tower here that was a guard tower before that they made, you know, probably more than 500 years ago. So authority structure, one thing I wanted to kind of hammer out a bit more defined with this is the authority structure of the school. What is the authority structure of the school? Obviously we have some sort of head person who oversees the school, but I don't want them to be like I don't want them to be like a Dumbledore-like figure. I don't want them to be like a calming, you know, kind presence in the eyes of the students. I want this person to be a military overseer. Maybe some of the teachers, probably some of the teachers are a bit more involved in the students' personal growth, but the overseer of this school, I want them to be military focused, and I want them to be specifically interested in bringing soldiers out, so useful soldiers. The school's main authority is this military overseer. There's no person who is authority above them in the school. Obviously, there are other military forces that have more authority, or excuse me, other military figures who have more authority than them, but this person was appointed here by this nation's military to this specific school. Like I said, this is a special school. Not all students who go through this 10-year program end up at this school. This is a special school where the top people go, so they want someone who has a vested in, or the military has a vested interest in bringing people up in this school, making them as useful as possible to the Empire, air quotes. So they've sent somebody that they trust who is a military figure, who's probably still, they're not like, I don't want them to be actively combative of the students, because he's still interested in making sure they're good soldiers. Maybe he even runs a class. I actually like that idea. Runs his own class, focusing on military tactics. So they have someone in the school, the overseer, who has military experience, and his job there is to oversee the school, make sure that they're turning out good soldiers, and he's going to be running a military tactics class. I want some authority who is specifically there to watch the students. Now, I don't know if that means in a like a snitch capacity, like making sure they're not getting into trouble, but there needs to be someone there who's responsible for the students. So we got the main authority, who's the overseer, and then we have this additional authority figure who's there to be responsible for the students. So that's their main thing, is they're there to make sure the students are, you know, probably maintaining the status quo. Not overtly. This is probably going to be someone who's going to seem more of a kind figure, but they're there to make sure that there's no dissent, effectively. All of them are obviously looking over this. Some of them more than others, but all of them are obviously looking for any dissent in the ranks. But by now they probably don't worry too much about it, because like I said, these are advanced students. Even if someone here is like bucking the system, they'll probably be, you know, talking to them more frequently, but the cost, you know, the cost benefit analysis in all of their heads is going to be, it's still more beneficial to have this person as a student and in the military than, you know, get rid of them, especially with the investment. And, you know, people don't think that they're this much of an issue. And obviously there's postings for soldiers in different spots based on how much they're liked or disliked, because if someone's like maybe a good commander or whatever, and they think that they might be difficult down the line, they'll probably want to assign that person just to the front lines, just straight up add them to the front lines. Hopefully they'll win some battles, you know, stuff like that. So they're not super worried about the students right now. Like they're not in the midst of indoctrinating them or brainwashing them or anything like that. Obviously that's constantly going on, you know, blah, blah, you know, we're good, this is a good thing that we're doing, but this is the end of their schooling, so that's not the primary focus, whereas the beginning of the schooling was definitely heavily focused on that. Another thing I wanted to kind of touch on is, where is this school in relation to other cities and geographical locations? So I generally don't make maps of the world super early, because I want to have an idea of where people want their characters from. Now in this world it doesn't matter quite as much, because all of the player characters have been forcibly brought together, so you don't need to worry about kind of, you know, because that would be like, oh, this person wants to be a monk from some sort of monastic order that is up in the high mountains, right? And I'm like, well, I didn't create any mountains nearby, so how am I going to make that happen? Stuff like that. That's the type of thing that I generally wait on. Though I guess in this world I don't need to worry too much about it, because everybody's being forcibly put there. There is still the, you know, if somebody wants to be of a foreign race or foreign background, you know, we'll need to make sure that there's, you know, some way to get them in there. Someone's like, well, I want to be, you know, a foreigner to this land. Like, that's fine. You know, this empire or whatever went to a town, conquered it, you know, took their children, sent them to the academy. But I mean, that's a real easy hand wave backstory thing. And, you know, you can put stuff in there that's more deep that the player doesn't know about, but it's easy to create that background link when you're creating such a forced backstory, for lack of term, especially with having them taken here as children. So whatever the location is, I want it to experience all 4 seasons. So I don't want this to be a tropical area, and I don't want this to be an Arctic area, or at least not so close to the Arctic that it is constantly, frozen and icy. Let's say there's a small town nearby. So there's a small town nearby, 2 days travel on foot. Would need to make sense. So one thing that's important to note, especially with our note earlier, this here, that it was original location is a single guard tower on the frontier. So this guard tower needed to be of some import. So let's say it's at the mouth of a pass. So the school is located at the mouth of a pass, built to span it. So that's actually a good thought. Now, obviously we're not in the frontier anymore, but that means any like army or anything traveling to or from the frontier, I guess we're calling it the frontier now, would be going through the school. So there's going to be quite a few travelers coming through the school, like through the courtyard of it. Okay, so I'm going to need to think of that when I organize it. And then that that small town is just going to be 2 days travel on foot back towards the empire proper. Good, I like that. That's a really good. I really like this idea now because I mean, I liked it before, but you know what I mean? Like, you just sit there and you think like, okay, why was this guard tower here? What would it would have been observing something with strategic significance before, right? So the guard tower was probably built against one side of the pass, right? To try and just control that area when they were going here, and then the school has built up around it. So yeah, so and that's one of the things I like doing, is thinking like, why is this here? What reason did this have to be here? There has to be a reason, because people don't just build stuff in random places. There has to be some sort of reason. And now, like, for instance, some people are like, well, what about a wizard tower in the middle of nowhere because the wizard wanted to be left alone? Well, that's why it was built there, because the wizard wanted to be left alone. You know, there's always a reason something is built somewhere. Usually it's a military purpose or a resource purpose. So there's going to be, like, you know, towns are going to spring up around where, you know, like good fishing on a river, like really good fishing, and like someone builds a, I don't know, water wheel or something like that, and then, you know, trade comes up around. It's like, oh, there's good logging here too, so then there's a lumber mill, that, you know, stuff like that. There's a reason that towns exist. They don't just spring up out of nowhere. Okay, so I really like this idea that it's at the mouth of a path and it's spanning it. That means there's also going to be lots of opportunities, even if you're having a good amount of roleplay in this, of them interacting with, you know, random merchants, traders, you know, just travelers, caravans, you know, of just people in general. Lots of good opportunities with that. I like that. I like that a lot. How many students? That's one thing I want to, that's probably the thing I want to figure out next, is how many students are here. I actually kind of like the idea of there not being that many. So let's assume that this school, okay, first off, we're assuming there are 4 people in the party, and let's assume this school groups people together as that. So, you know, your players' characters are going to be grouped together by the school, like assigned each other effectively. And they train them in teams specifically to go into, like, military units, to be, you know, different parts of authority and different specialists in this unit. So they're going to train, I would say, like 6 to 10 groups at the same time. So we're looking at 6 groups to 10 groups of 4. So 24 to 40 students. Groups live together in barracks/tents and do most training together. That's good. Okay, so we have like a better idea of the structure of the school, the physical layout of the school. Why is the school there? What was the reason of it existing? You know, how did it start? All that stuff. So we can say history-wise, it started by, you know, obviously this guard tower is here, and then people in the frontier kept getting sent to this area as a staging ground, and then they would do training there, and then slowly it became a more official elite officer training thing, which then became a part of this specific schooling program where they're taking children and training them for about 10 years. I dig it. I dig it. Yeah. I think that's good for now. We have a more concrete idea of this school, what it entails, who's there, why it's there, where it is. All right, thank you everybody for hanging out and watching this stuff. Stay tuned for more Dungeons and Dragons tips and more cool videos here. Make sure to subscribe, like, and comment here. Turn on that notification so you know when my new videos are coming up. Have a great one.